Afternoon. I was going to say morning in a bit, but it's actually afternoon. And alhamdulillah on this Tuesday, and lovely weather outside, nice and sunny, and we're all, mashallah, hopefully listening and awake and tuned in. This is the education show, the second part. We had one last week. This is the second part of the education show, and today we will be discussing quite interesting points, namely actually looking at barriers and challenges within the whole education system. But we've got to understand that there's actually different stakeholders involved in education. So if we take the school context, we've got one side, obviously the core of the education there is the students themselves, but then we've got the actual facilitators, the teachers and the support staff. And then we've got stakeholders, obviously the parents and the carers, which are very, very crucial in the whole structure of education. And with that, the school itself, the whole mechanism of the whole school, and the governing body and the governors themselves. And if we're in a multi-academic trust, then obviously that is escalated to a higher degree. So you've got lots of stakeholders out there. So that's why it's very, very important to understand that anything that happens within the education system, all these stakeholders are involved, and number two, there is impact on all these stakeholders together. So we have to consider that. Anyway, I have got a studio guest with me today, and we are going to do a round robin again. Just if you've forgotten, I am Khalid Patel, been in education for a good 25 years or so, alhamdulillah, in different roles and responsibilities, from head of year to head of department to experience of senior leadership and consultancy in education across the board. And we continue with that. And that's me. And we have also got here in the studio.
Yeah, I'm Zaheer Patel. Sorry, assalamu alaikum to all our listeners out there. Again, thank you all for tuning in. I hope it's beneficial. So I've been teaching for, I was thinking about this morning actually, so I've been teaching for about 9.5 years now.
Okay, mashallah.
I was thinking, it's nearly 10 years and the grades are definitely coming now. So yeah, it's been about 9.5 years. I was teaching at one school before when I started. Well, actually, when I started teaching, I was doing a little bit of supply teaching, which gave me a good overview of a lot of the different schools in Leicester. And then the school I was actually doing supply in, they just took me on for 1 year, so I did 1 year sort of maternity cover over there. I was out of a job after that, and then since then I've been, working at a different school, and I've been at the same school for about 8.5 years now. I'm a teacher of science. I'm also a second in department as well, which is sort of like a deputy head of science as well. And I also work quite closely with, University of Leicester, other sort of Russell Group universities, to promote widening participation and outreach programs to really help our sort of disadvantaged pupils and really sort of help and support them in the best way possible so that they can end up in some of the elite universities in the whole world, I'd probably say as well.
MashaAllah. And actually, you just mentioned straight away as you were talking there about disadvantaged students. And funny enough, that's one of the, the barriers and challenges that in education we have, because we've got a whole variety of different students from different backgrounds all coming together within schools. And this is the challenge itself, because to have a balanced approach and to make positive outcomes for every student that goes through within the education system, that is an immense challenge itself. Anyway, inshallah, today's program, we're going to be talking about challenges and barriers in education. Do join in, mashallah, if you're listening out there. The studio number is 0116 4822 and the text number to WhatsApp in is, or text in is 077 488 55055. I highly would recommend those teachers out there who are maybe listening or in education also to give their input, alhamdulillah, in whichever capacity they can, because obviously this is an interactive program and collectively we'll be talking about this. Now there's two aspects here we can talk about: barriers and challenges. Obviously this could actually be with the governing body, or it could be within the actual staff themselves, that's the teachers and the support staff, or it could be the barriers and challenges with the students themselves, and obviously the parents and carers. So it actually covers the whole spectrum. But you'll find barriers and challenges that whatever we talk about, they cross-reference anyway. You will find that barriers and challenges, for example, we just mentioned about disadvantaged students or pupil premium students. These students themselves obviously affects the students themselves, but then it directly affects the teachers, because they've got to facilitate special provision for these students themselves. And also at the same time, what impact will it have on parents? And then how are the governing body monitoring, looking after this and sustaining and making sure that this is implemented and put in place? So it actually cross-references. So I'm actually going to first of all look at the teaching profession and the teachers themselves and the kind of barriers that could happen there and the kind of challenges. So Zaheer, obviously you've been in teaching profession for quite a few years now, but still you're literally on the first 10 years or so, and you've been through a nice little journey, it seems, alhamdulillah. So can you just tell us, what's your take on this, about the barriers with actual teachers themselves and facilitators and getting into the profession?
Yeah, very good question to start with. Firstly, I just want to echo that, alhamdulillah, because I truly I'm very, very grateful for and privileged to be in this position. I sometimes think, could I ever work in a different environment? So sometimes, I get picked up by Uber drivers to come to school, and they'll be driving, and I think, oh, could I be doing this all day? Or I might be in a different scenario. I was in Twin Lakes, like I said just the other day, and there was one person just pushing out boats the whole day, and pushing out the paddle boats, and I was thinking, could I do this all day? Sometimes you reflect on these sort of circumstances. So firstly, I'm very thankful, alhamdulillah, it's by the grace of the Almighty that I'm in the teaching profession. Funnily enough, Khalid bhai, you were actually one of my inspirations to get into teaching.
He says that on air. Yeah.
I think I did mention this to you before, but it was actually back in 2008 or something like that. There was one Jamaat, which is like a religious trip, that we can go on, and it was yourself. There was Muhammad Patel, Farhan Adam, Idris Khan. So there's a lot of teachers.
Familiar names.
Yeah.
I'm sure the audience are listening out there and thinking, hang on, that individual's in that school. Anyway, carry on.
And yes, amazing people and amazing professionals as well. And it was just nice to be part of that and to try and see you guys and see how much of an effort you were making, both in your professional lives, but also how much of an effort you're making as part of Jamaat as well. So that was really inspirational for me, and I was thinking of something else, but it was actually through clearing I then applied for teaching, being part of that Jamaat, part of that group. So thank you for that again.
Okay. It's a pleasure.
Actually, my father wanted me to become a doctor, but the counter to that, I always tell him that I couldn't be a doctor, but I have married a doctor. So
okay, next best thing.
Next best thing. Anyways, moving on from there. So my journey was a little bit I guess it was pushed, like I said, with inspirational people like yourselves, and I got through the clearing, and then, I got into teaching. I absolutely loved it. I think other people coming into teaching, they'll always have this question mark in their mind that, oh, am I really cut out, for teaching? Am I really built for teaching? Can I stand in front of 30 kids and manage their behavior? And it was some question marks that I had in my mind as well, like coming into teaching. Am I going to be okay to behave and manage to teach at the same time, to handle the issues and the different issues that take place on a daily basis with all of these kids? In terms of response to that, what I'd probably suggest, and what I did as well, was to just try to do some work experience. Go into a school yourself, experience it, be part of a classroom. Even if you can ask for a little bit of teaching, if you can, it might just be a starter activity at the start of a lesson. Talk to teachers. Even listening into this show, I hope we'll try and answer some questions and relax some nerves about teaching. And finally, the thing that I always think is, as humans, we are very, very adaptable. We're very adaptable to situations that we're in. Depending on the environment, we'll grow, and we just develop in whatever environment that we actually put into. So even if we are put into an environment that initially we're quite unfamiliar, uncomfortable with, we should really develop into that. And before we know it, we can become outstanding teachers. And by being outstanding teachers, all you really need to do is not really focus on becoming an outstanding teacher. You need to think, how can I serve the children under my care in the most outstanding way? So if you rephrase that and think, okay, I'm not thinking about myself here, but I'm thinking, how can I sort of make the most difference I can possibly make to my learners, to the people under my care? That will actually make you, ironically, an outstanding practitioner in any way. And in that way, you really enjoy the journey, you really make a positive impact, make a difference. So,
just to put it in context, sorry, Zaheer, before we carry on, for the listeners out there, if we start contemplating and thinking, if we were to brainstorm now, what would be the barriers or challenges? If you had a pen and paper and start writing down all the things that would happen in a classroom and the barriers to that. So, for example, you would have things like class size. That makes a big difference. The room, logistics of the room makes a big difference. The provision of the resources makes a big difference. The technology available, that makes a big difference. Then you got the actual student behavior and the attendance and the punctuality. And then you've got the baggage of each child, because each child is from a family, and each family is in a circumstance, financial circumstance, the location, geographical location, the friend circle that they're in, and the mentality towards work and towards the academic study, and all these different criteria, as it were. They all are barriers that a teacher needs to address and take into account, because you can't just teach a lesson just like that. You've got to take everything into account and then plan and then implement and deliver that lesson. And then there's always reflection. So all that a teacher does. So did you find that challenging, Zaheer?
Yeah, again, a very good question. It's always different as well. So you have different challenges with different year groups, different classes on a year-to-year basis. Firstly, I think if you're talking about the classroom for a teacher is like your space, it's your environment. So the first thing is to try to create a classroom environment where you're going to try to mitigate a lot of these challenges that are faced, to really try and create a positive classroom environment, to really sort of stamp down your authority, with love and respect as well, and to really sort of value each and every single child in your classroom. And I think if you can approach it in that way, set those clear boundaries in a really positive, in a really impactful sort of way, then automatically you'll get students coming into your classroom, with a sense of calm, with a sense of purpose, and that could mitigate a lot of the issues, just from the get-go. But having said that, there is, some classes where you just go in, you can just teach, everything's fine. Other classes maybe a very excitable year 7 group that's, always calling out for, this one's poking me with a pencil, or, I need a pen, sir, or, I can't see the board, sir, or so you'll have those types of classes. But other times you'll have the very challenging, sort of disruptive classes as well. But as a teacher, as you develop, you'll have so many different things in your toolbox to try to challenge any of that. The way I've always operated is to try and create a very, very positive culture inside the classroom, especially if there is any students that are misbehaving, there is behavioral issues there, then just talking to them one-on-one, trying to find out what is what's happening over here. Is there something that I can do, something I can help you with? Do you need any support? Do you want to come to the front? And sometimes the sort of behavioral issues, it's more about attention. So if you can give positive attention, like, okay, I have this thing called Star of the Week in my class.
Okay.
And I've been doing it for years, and sometimes teachers even ask me that, do year 10 and year 11 students respond to this? Like having their name written on the board and, being given a certificate. So I'm like, they absolutely love it. So giving students that praise, recognition, that attention in a positive way, and just to sort of be quite involved in their lives. So I'd probably say, alhamdulillah, I don't really need to deal with a lot of challenging situations in a classroom.
And I think the key word there is routines.
Yeah.
Because if you've got routines in place, automatically the students will set into that environment, and they will follow that routine, and they will know the expectations. That's why many a times myself, what I've done over the years is that at the beginning of every half term or whatever, when you come back after a holiday, first lesson, first 5 minutes will be, put your slide up, why am I here? And that question is posed to the students, and they know the answer. I am here to learn. And then if you're going to learn, then we're not going to have any time for misbehavior. We're not going to have any time for any disruption or distraction. Then our purpose will be to learn constantly. So that is actually ingrained in the routine. So what about for the barriers for the actual teachers themselves, for the staff? What other points can we mention here? Because obviously we got barriers for the students. So one of the barriers that we just mentioned just now is basically the teachers, the facilitators, the support staff understanding the students and putting expectations clearly out there, and routines are put in place. And you've got the barrier of disengagement, but we've got the solution here of a routine that will have this engagement. So anything else that you've got there on barriers?
Are we talking
about staff
now? I think firstly, if we were to focus on staff coming into the profession, this is something that was highlighted again just a couple of weeks ago as well, which has always been there. Actually going into university to actually become a teacher, there is the question mark of a student loan. And when I was in University of Leicester, there was a whole talk on student loans and how to explain student loans to parents and things like that. But again, I was thinking that, okay, if they are, students in the future that are not going to attend university, or potential teachers not going to attend university because of the student loan and the borrowing and the interest that comes from that, again, that is a bit of a barrier, that is a challenge. I think actually Islamic Finance Guru, which is, they do a lot of work online. They've got a YouTube channel as well. They have been lobbying the government in regards to trying to create a sort of Sharia compliant alternative to student loans. But I think that is another one. But that wouldn't just be the barrier for teaching, it'd be for any university degree anyway. But I really think going forward, if they can do more work on that, and we can all help and support them to really sort of not allow that barrier to even be there, or allow that challenge to be there, where any student, can just enter university, not worrying that the money that they're borrowing, even has a little bit interest associated with it.
Well, one thing I'm going to put on you, put you on the spot, as it were, a bit of role play here. Yeah. Say you are a new PGC student, your first day in the classroom, and you walk in. If I was to pose to you the question, what worries have you got? What are you going to say?
I think the most important one, or the biggest one, would be behavior. Okay. Behavior, possibly, and the other one I probably had going back to, going a long time ago now, but it would be like getting asked a really weird question that I don't really know the answer to.
Subject knowledge you're talking
about. Subject knowledge, yeah. So obviously you know your subject knowledge, but I'm sure we've all experienced that really sort of smart kid in the class that sits at the back and just sort of puts the teacher on the spot with these really sort of random questions. And I think it was that. So maybe those two areas. But as you go on, and as the first time you teach through the curriculum, the sort of subject knowledge is completely gone. You're very confident with everything you're teaching. And then behavior, like we were talking about earlier, with routines, creating a positive classroom environment, making each student feel very valued, respected, building those relationships that are positive, that could mitigate any behavioral issues.
So, obviously we've got barriers and challenges of students from disadvantaged backgrounds, pupil premium students. How would we address that? Because obviously, if you got for a scenario, we got a class list here, a new class has just come up, we're going to start teaching the students. You identify each and every student's background and the target levels and whatever else. In there, you identify also, say, 4 or 5 students here are pupil premium or disadvantaged. What's the plan with that? How will the teacher tackle that one?
Yeah, so actually within our own science department, with pupil premium and non-pupil premium, we don't massively discriminate, because we think even if, actually just going through what pupil premium is to start off.
It'll be good for the audience to understand what it is.
It's just sort of families or students that come from sort of more disadvantaged backgrounds in terms of financial circumstances. Mm-hmm. So it could be free school meals, and like I said, they earn under a certain threshold, that's actually going into the household income. And if you fall below that, there's pupil premium. Those pupil premium students will actually get more money from the government as well, and then that's fed into the school. So actually, within the whole sort of teaching environment of a classroom, there isn't much discrimination. We will try to focus, with those students in terms of more questions. We will actually acknowledge them. And the one thing that we do discriminate when we have pupil premium is especially with trips.
Okay.
So with trips, if there's
how does that work then?
So sometimes, they might not need to pay, as much, on the trip. Or other times, because there's a certain amount of pupil premium students within a trip, that lowers the cost for everyone as well, and there's more contribution coming from school. So we've had a couple of trips recently. So we had one to the Space Center, for example, for year 7s, and that's what was done. So in that circumstance, I think it would have been close to about £15 for everybody going.
Okay.
But for the school, sort of subsidized that, and then students only had to pay £7.50. And that was obviously for the day, for the transport as well. So there is that, and like I said, especially in the classroom, we give them a lot of help support anyway. Like within a department, we make sure each student, especially in Key Stage 4, is given CGP guides, and those are just revision guides that they can sort of keep for 3 years.
Another major challenge is that within the classroom, obviously, we've got an audience of students of different backgrounds and different ability. So you'll have some which are on the higher end spectrum, higher order students, and on the other side you might have EL students or SEND students. So how is the planning in there, and how is that implemented, and how do we maintain progress that every student child is actually coming out with positive outcomes?
Yeah, so normally, again, within our own science department, within the school that I'm currently working at, we have a very good sort of setting in place. So we have, setting for like set 1, set 2, set 3, goes down to about set 5. And especially if it's set 1 students, then, they're going to be the sort of most able students. You're going to teach the set 1 students in a slightly different way. You're going to be covering content in quite a deep way. You're getting through quite a lot of content. There is going to be a lot of behavioral issues. The pace of it's going to be quite fast as well. Where other times you have, classes where there's more SEND or EAL. So SEND is like special educational needs, EAL, English as an additional language. You're really going to sort of lower that pace. It's going to be like, in my mind, the way I imagine it, with a set 1 class, you're sort of sprinting through, and the kids are fine. They're with you. With sort of more lower ability or SEND, it's more of a crawl. But you need to, have that within your toolkit as a teacher to be able to accommodate, for both classes. And sometimes it might be that you have one class which is very high ability. The class following, right next to it, is a class that's going to be very low level.
So I suppose the advantage of the setted groups is that they're all high ability, so you can accelerate the program in such a manner that they are moving at a high pace. Absolutely. Whereas on the other side, you might have more support, more provision, more handheld activities, more visuals, for example. But then would you have a scenario where you, like for example, it's the groups we teach within my subject, we have mixed ability, everybody together. So then the challenge is straight away for the teacher, right? You've got a classroom of, say, 30 students. We've got one side, we've got the high ability students, to making sure that they're working independently, they're stretched to their best ability. And on the other side, you've got students which need a lot of support. And you might have resources like a teaching assistant within the classroom, so to deploy them and to manage that together. And then you got ones in the middle, which sometimes get left out, because if you're concentrating too much towards the higher end students or towards the less able students, unfortunately the ones in the middle, you might find that they kind of missed. So you got to make sure that this is the challenge from the teacher's perspective, is that how to plan in such a manner that everybody is making progress within the lesson. And if Mr. or Mrs. Ofsted decide to come into the classroom with their deep dives, these are the things that they want to see, that obviously every student is making progress. And this is the challenge. And within that, all that's going on, Zaheer, and it's brilliant, we planned it out, we're doing the lesson, and all of a sudden, 2 students have a bit of an argument, and these are the other challenges I'm just going to mention now, is that there was something that happened last night online. They were talking online, they're playing games, for example, and they got into a dispute, and that dispute has ended up into the classroom, and the argument is carried on, and next thing you know, you're doing the lesson, and all of a sudden, bang, in the middle, they have a bit of an argument and a bit of a punch-up. So then everything has changed. So these scenarios do happen. Anything else that you can think of are barriers and challenges that you've experienced over the years?
I think just to sort of talk a little bit about the last sort of points that you've made about a fight in a sort of fight situation. Again, that could be a worry in the potential teacher's mind.
Yeah,
I have experienced that as well. One situation was very sad actually, where there was one student actually sort of just beating up another student, but because of the sensitivities around safeguarding and not sort of being able to sort of hold a student and obviously safeguarding, I unfortunately couldn't intervene as much as I'd wanted to. So I just put my body in the way. But I mean, if that same situation was outside, with grown adults, you'd want to sort of just grab them and take them aside. But
and that then falls into the restraining policy of the school.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, but anyways, in that situation, just have one student outside, the other student with another teacher, and then on call, and they.
But the systems are in place,
exactly.
So obviously these scenarios might happen. But then there's immediate effect and immediate systems in place where support is there, and things are removed, individuals are removed, and then intervention is taken, and then it goes back to why did it happen, and there's a follow-on intervention also for these students that in future it doesn't happen again. So, but this is the dynamic environment that teachers face with, and all that is happening. That's absolutely brilliant. And then we're going along, and all systems are in place, as it were. Then all of a sudden, I'll tell you, Barry, and what's happened? COVID happens. How did that happen? Obviously, how did we cope with COVID? Because that was a major, major challenge. All of a sudden, one day you can go to school, and next day you can't. But the continuation of the education, which is the most important thing here, what happened there?
Yeah, like everything was just normal, and then all of a sudden COVID came. I remember the outbreak, from China to then Italy. And then obviously we were like, it's just a matter of time, the UK. And then all of a sudden, like, school was just completely closed, from March 2019 till the end of that year. And then we started again September. But it was quite a difficult situation, quite a scary situation. I feel like especially the teachers within our school, the leadership within our school, dealt with it amazingly well. The students within our school dealt with it amazingly well. And we used, remote sort of teaching using Microsoft Teams.
That's when the blended learning and all that came in.
Yeah, exactly. Well, actually, we didn't start that straight away. We started just, before Microsoft Teams, we were just sort of giving a lot of online work. So we've got softwares that we've, paid for within the science department called Doddle. We had Seneca as well, so we gave a lot of work through Doddle and Seneca, and then obviously as the systems became more established, we then used Teams to then do sort of proper sort of remote teaching, and it was a time of adapting, and like I talked about at the start of the talk, teachers and people, we are very adaptable, and we had to adapt, and we did, and we've come out.
Would you say a teacher does one job in the classroom, or a superhero multitasking?
It is like there is this. I think somewhere I read that a teacher makes over like 200 decisions within the 1 hour. Sorry, how much time have we got?
Okay, no worry, carry on.
So, I do want to talk about some other things, but so a teacher makes roughly about 200 decisions.
Let's come a bit closer, sorry.
Come a bit closer, okay. And I remember seeing this quote. You know how you have those like pictures and there's like a quote on it, and you can just sort of send it. So I remember seeing like a teacher, and then there's like 50 other sort of titles next to it. A teacher's like a counselor, a teacher's like a parent, a teacher's like a therapist. All of these things that a teacher does, And you have to have a little bit of all of that within you, because at the end of the day, and sometimes you will actually be seeing a child, for more in the day than their parent even sees them. So you're making, such a big impact, and you will need to tick a lot of those other boxes. So you're not just, a face in front of the classroom that's extracting or giving, knowledge, but you're doing a lot more. And one of the most important things and the most rewarding things I find about teaching is the personal development that you can make, as opposed to the academic sort of development.
That's right.
So I think that's the most important thing.
And that's why, we need to be role models.
Exactly.
Because that's really, really crucial. Because in fact, you are the practical role model. As you say, they see you every day. And then whatever we say, whatever we do, has a big impact, and obviously you'll always remember this. By the way, listeners out there, we've got about 14 minutes left. If you do want to have your say in this, 077 488 55055. Is there anything from your side that you want to just mention about the challenges in education that you might consider and you might have experienced yourself? So if you might be a student, you might be a person in education, it might be a parent or in the governing body, or you might be part of the community. Along the way, we've all been through school, alhamdulillah, and along the way, we will have our children going through school. So that's why it's very important that we understand how much of an importance this is. So if anybody wants to text in on 077 488 55055, and inshallah we can have your say also on air. We are listening to the Education Show with me, Khalid Patel, and Zaheer Patel, both Patels here, alhamdulillah, Patel crew, and we are discussing challenges and barriers. Sorry, Zaheer, so you were going to mention something else. Well, I just mentioned this. So, all yours. So, we were mentioning about the barriers.
Yeah, I think another sort of massive area, which has, there's been a lot of focus on it in the past couple of years now, is around teacher workload.
Okay.
Yeah, so...
Very interesting point, that. Yeah,
okay. And... I mean, these are just my own personal opinions.
Yeah.
I don't want to be held, by my opinions. But, a lot of teachers, feel that we are very overworked. I actually feel like it's the opposite way around.
A common thing I hear people say, but you teachers have enough holidays.
Exactly.
Right? So,
and I agree with
do we have enough holidays, or are we working through the holidays? What's your take on that?
So like right now we're on holidays until like 2 weeks in Ramadan as well. Yeah. So we're. That's amazing. Summer holidays are absolutely amazing. We finish, at 3 o'clock sometimes. There is meetings and things like that we have to do. But with workload, I just think at the end of the day, you are a teacher. Does need to be work. And these workload is especially an issue in terms of feedback and marking, in terms of data management, in terms of preparing, schemes of work. And communications. So with like feedback and marking, although sometimes it's is a very tedious task, it does need to be done. It needs to be done properly so that you can sort of allow students to develop and to tell them, okay, in this test that you did, you got this.
Just for the audience, sorry, just to put you in perspective, we're talking about feedback, marking and feedback. Year 11s, for example, they go through their mock exam before their final exam. So just give you a scenario. For example, you might have a class of, say, 25, 30 students. So that means 25 and 30, say 30 papers, exam papers, you got to mark. Times that by maybe 4 groups. That's 3, 6, 9, 12. 120 papers you've got to mark. And you've got a deadline of a week to put it all in. So that's the workload you can go through. And obviously, one kind of marking would be just summative, where you just obviously giving a mark and that's it. But teachers tend to give the feedback. There's formative marking, what errors they might have made and what they need to improve on. So that is the context of marking of just 1 year group at one time exam papers. So unlike that, things continue. Sorry, Zaheer, you can carry on. So we're talking about, the marking and feedback.
Yeah, no, thank you for framing it like that. I was just like jumping into it. But so, you'll end up, like Khalid was just saying, that you might have, so much sort of marking to do in a week, 2 weeks. I think another thing just to quickly mention over here is that this isn't the case all throughout the year. You have these moments or these time periods where it's very, heavy. Then it sort of flattens down. So it sort of goes up, comes back down. But I think, it is important. There is a lot of work that's already being put into place to try to, sort of reduce that. And even if you just go onto the DFE or the government website, you can just type in like reduce teacher workload, and there's actual government toolkits that you can go through. Have surveys, and then look at where the areas are. Possibly ideas, strategies to actually improve it. And I think 90% of the work that we do, it actually does need to be done. There's about 10% of red tape of that can be reduced.
What we term as non-negotiables, which we have to do in the teaching profession. Then everything else just follows suit.
Yeah, and things like data management, that's like putting data onto the system. It needs to be done. Communications like parents' evenings and reports writing. And things have been done to improve it. For example, in our school, with reports, we've created like different templates for reports. Before we had to write every report from scratch.
I remember the days of writing reports by hand.
Wow, imagine that. Yeah, so things have improved. Imagine from those days, and you would have to write a report by hand for every single student that you've taught, which is probably about 150 students if you spread out 30 over 5 classes that you have. And even up until a couple of years ago, we were writing reports from scratch. But we have these amazing templates that we contributed, made together. With things like planning. Again, we're working within a department. You're not just an individual. So there might be one teacher that makes something amazing. They'll share it with the department, and that will reduce everyone's workload. So over here, in this, you can sort of share, create, and then obviously share again, use somebody else's work. So things are being done. Obviously, more needs to be done. But I think with workload, it's not as big as it probably seems. Yes, there is obviously parts of the year that can get very busy.
Would you say in the teaching profession there's a lot of emotion?
I think it's I wouldn't say emotion. I think there's different teachers. So I think there's obviously the glass half full type of people, the positive people, the people that just get on with things. There is also the people, and I'm just generalizing, this is everywhere in society. There'll always be the people that, oh, right, what we're doing here, why are we doing this? Or I'm not happy with this, or so there's always that. And especially I remember doing the leadership program a couple of years ago.
Oh, yes.
Wherein it's all about if change comes, just be part of it. Don't be the one at the back. Just be part of that change. Go with it. And the term is actually called an early adopter. So be an early adopter to change. I think sometimes in teaching,
I just remember Storm. Was it Storm? Storm, norm, perform. That's it.
Yeah, it was all that.
Storm the idea, then it eventually becomes a norm, and then everybody starts performing.
Exactly. Yeah. That's literally the session it was. So I think there's always an outlook that you have, and I'm sort of delving into that personal philosophy over here, but it just depends on how you see the world. It depends on how you are as a person, who you are as a person. If you are generally negative with things in teaching or in your work, you might that might sort of translate into different parts of your life. If you are more of a positive person that's just get up and do things and go and not make an issue out of things, then that can sort of translate as well. And
I think it makes an individual very caring. Because after a while, because we go through students and you try to help them and support them in whichever way. And obviously there's a lot of issues, personal issues and family issues and whatever else. And eventually when that student passes and they have that big smile on their face and they show you the certificate, look sir, what I got, and they're so happy, and obviously that makes us happy, because at the end of the day, through that journey, we were part of that journey for them to eventually alhamdulillah, get that final grade, and they go with a smile. So that's the impact it has. And when you go out, the alumni, when you go out to different places, you'll find that students have moved on and they go into different professions, and you see they come back and they will say, the good days of their memories of, and then you remind them, you owe me a detention, don't you? In this manner. But that positive emotion is there.
Exactly. I think just sort of highlighting that point about emotion that you just said, I think understanding that question, talking about emotional intelligence.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think, like you said, being caring and understanding students' needs. And especially I think before I became a teacher, I didn't have the emotional intelligence that I have now, because going through teaching, being able to deal with a lot of different students from a lot of different backgrounds, and being able to sort of communicate at that level, and sort of sometimes take part in those difficult conversations. Almost your professional development can impact your personal development. So another massive highlight or benefit of being a teacher, I suppose, you're growing professionally, but that is also helping you grow as a person as well. And even now, like the way I sort of do things, like we were just talking about some of my preparation here, the way that you're organized in doing things, because you're organized as a teacher, that will then impact on your personal life. Just one last thing that I wanted to mention on workload. So I find it difficult, this word as well, of workload, because sometimes when I'm even saying things, I'll be like, oh, I don't refer to my work as work. I'll just be like, oh, I'm going back to school, because I don't even see work as work. I sort of see work as an area, as where I can make an impact, where I can serve the next generation. And in COVID, like we were talking about earlier, when there was nothing, for a bit, I was almost like scratching my head, thinking that actually, my life, one of the most important things of my life is being a teacher, and being able to make that impact in that way, and not being sort of utilized in that way, and not being able to serve the next generation, make an impact, that actually, it doesn't feel good at all. It makes me feel like there's a massive lack in my life, or I'm just sort of wasting my life. So with workload, again, like I said, I find that term quite difficult, because the work that you're doing, you're serving the next generation. So if you take, jumping off on a bit of a tangent, if you take Elon Musk, for example, he's the richest person on earth. If he wanted, he doesn't need to be working, but he's working, he's probably the most hard-working person on the planet. He's got so many different companies, Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and he could just be like enjoying, his life, but he doesn't see his work as work. He sees his work as making a difference and helping the environment and helping humanity. And, he sees it so important that, he's just working like non-stop. So with me, when I look at workload, I feel like, the question comes, am I doing enough? Rather than, am I doing
because
too much?
it's your aim and your objective. The motivation is there. And that becomes your life, as it were. I heard one reference made that when a teacher, for example, is going into school, they're going into the ocean of students. They are diving into the ocean of students. And what are they doing? Supporting and helping and providing and nurturing and guiding. And so that's what facilitators and teachers do. So that's why it's really nice to see this and to hear this, that this is the passion we need to have in our profession. It's to make a difference on the individual, and that difference will make a difference on the whole of society. We've got 2 minutes left. So any last words, Zaheer, before we sign off today? Anybody want to join in and text quickly through? 0774 8855 any words from your listeners out there? Zaheer, we've got about just less than 2 minutes. Any last words for the listeners out there?
No, firstly, I just want to say thank you to everybody listening in. As you're probably aware, there was a great deal of anxiety about being on this show.
You did a fabulous job, don't worry, Zaheer.
No, I think just like talking and just sort of talking about teaching and sort of reflecting on different areas, it's just amazing. And anybody that has any questions, anybody thinking about teaching, just go for it. You can always speak to us, speak to somebody else. But it's a massively rewarding job, and massively recommended to anyone out there thinking about it.
Excellent. So dear listeners out there on 87.7 FM, last few words. Yes, there are barriers, there are challenges in the education field, but there are solutions. And the main point here, the overall sentence is, it is very, very rewarding. That's why we need more teachers out there. So brothers and sisters, wherever you are, do consider, especially the young who are still studying, consider a profession in the teaching field, because it is very, very rewarding. And there's lots of things there that we need to go through and talk about, but maybe on another time. Our time is up. We've talked about the education show. Maybe on another occasion, we'll be carrying on more and inshallah talking further on this. And the last words I would say is, make dua for your teachers also, whichever teachers you had in your life. It could be the school, could be the university, could be the college, could be the madrasa also, could be those individuals who's taught us something. do pray for them. That's right. Pray for them, because at the end of the day, they are part and parcel of our life and our change in our life. So Allah Ta'ala give us tawfiq. Yes, sir.
Yeah, just to leave it on a quick cliffhanger then, if you've got time.
So 10 seconds.
Next time we want to maybe talk about academic education as opposed to a more hybrid education, like life education, to try to merge them together.